What's up, Bulldog Nation? Put a smile on your face because we've got some major recruiting news to talk about. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be a wild one.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jaron Spor. Welcome to Locked On Mississippi State, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Real quick, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Like I said, I'm Jaron Spor. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. Landon isn't able to join us today, but we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to dive into the transfer portal, and we will recap the weekend game. Did we get our upset pick right for the last week of the season? We'll find out. Also, just before I started recording, my ring light went out. So, sorry. This is the lighting we're going to have to roll with for today. But let's dive into recruiting. Obviously the season goes 5-7. You do improve 3 games based off of last year. And I know there's a lot of people upset based on how the season ended. You started 4-0. You go 1-7 the rest of the way. I get it. But you got some big news on Monday. Because 4-star safety, highly rated 4-star safety, Bralan Womack, who is from here in Mississippi, he has flipped his commitment, and he is now going to be a part of the Mississippi State class. This was obviously a major get for Jeff Lebby, and from everything I've read, Lebby was kind of the big driver in his recruitment. He was kind of leading the charge. If you look at him, he's overall the 4th-ranked safety. If you take Rivals 24/7 and ESPN, 4th-ranked safety, number 35 overall player. He's as high as the number 2-ranked safety, and that's on Rivals. But then he's as low as 4 on 24/7 Sports. I saw some people call him a 5-star. He's not a 5-star in any of the rankings right now, but he's still a very high 4-star. Like, he's a fringe 5-star kind of guy. I believe he was committed to Auburn before flipping to Mississippi State. But Texas A&M was a team that was really coming on late too. 48.9% chance of landing him is what the prediction is. But obviously, Mississippi State won out, even though they had a 22.3% chance. But, this was a kid that we saw that and have been hearing. He was starting to get more interested in Mississippi State. He was on campus this last weekend for the Egg Bowl, I believe, and I mentioned it on Monday's episode, but Camario Taylor was tweeting at him about, you need to come to Mississippi State, and just sending stuff to him that way. And that's why I've said, I think based off of stuff I've seen, Camario seems like he's still all in and is going to stay at Mississippi State. Now, we'll see, because the tampering is probably just now beginning for him. So we'll see what ends up happening when it comes to that. But it is a massive get. I mean, the safety room was one of the really bright spots on the team this year. Dron Manning, Brylan Lanier, and I know Isaac Smith's kind of that hybrid. But they were all really good for Mississippi State this year, and I think that played a factor in Womack, trusting what Mississippi State's doing. And like I said, this is a Jeff Lebby push, so this isn't something that I wouldn't expect if Coleman Hutzler, for example, got let go, which I really don't expect that to happen. But if he, again, and we talked about it on Monday, if he refuses to kind of change up his strategy defensively, maybe he is let go. But as of now, I don't really expect that to happen. We'll see what ends up happening there. But with that being said, this is kind of, going back to what I was saying with Womack. If Hutzler was let go, I don't expect him then to look elsewhere. I think this is one that Mississippi State has come in late and won, and they've won because of Jeff Lebby and the vision that Jeff Lebby is preaching. And Jeff Lebby's a really good recruiter, and so I expect them to kind of stick it out, or Womack to stick it out, even if Hutzler is let go. But that was obviously massive, because it was reported like maybe an hour before the flip happened that Steve Whitfong, from Rivals and On3, he had put out he fonged him to Mississippi State, and that's always usually a tell that he's coming to Mississippi State. One of the reasons why Fong is kind of looked at the way he is a lot of times he's getting the info right before they're committing. Now, sometimes he does it beforehand, so I don't want to say like he's just waiting last minute to do stuff, but a lot of times he gets told last minute, and he's not a guy like some of the guys are like, hey, if I put in a prediction for you and then I get more intel saying that you're actually going to go elsewhere, I don't like going back on that because I want to stick to what I was confident enough in predicting. Whereas Fong, he will flip if he thinks things are going differently. But yeah, we saw that, and then boom, happens another one. And we're recording this obviously before Tuesday because we don't do this show live, so things can change in this world. And I just got a notification, so I'm trying to make sure this isn't one of those things that has changed. No, it hasn't. But another one that Fong put in a prediction for was Micah Nickerson, the edge rusher. That obviously from Mississippi as well. He's committed to Missouri. He's a 4-star on Rivals, but he's a 3-star everywhere else. Rivals has him really high, top 100 guy, 13th ranked edge. 24/7 and ESPN have him as a 3-star, not even in their top 100, top 250 even. It doesn't even show his number, and anywhere from 53 to 85 as their edge. And so they're a little down on him than Rivals is. But yeah, I mean, this also would be a massive get. He's 6'5", 215. He's a guy that's going to have to put on some weight, but with how bad the pass rush has been really the last 2 years, he's a guy that could step on the field and play immediately. Now, you wouldn't like that. You would rather him put on some weight and get there and become that kind of player for them. But, he might have to step in and play immediately based off of just how poor it's been. Now, they're going to hit the transfer portal, and we'll hit that hard, and hopefully we can get some guys in there that can play immediately, and Nickerson can kind of redshirt and learn. As far as Womack, he's also a guy that could compete immediately for them. He's listed at 6'1", 200 pounds on Rivals website, or 6'1.5", 200 pounds on Rivals website. He's a guy that could play immediately, really. Again, I don't like putting those expectations on younger guys. I don't want to expect them to be able to make an immediate impact, but that's just, I'm just letting you know that the reality is he has, both of these guys have the ability to do that. Again, I'm not predicting them to. I'm not telling you to expect them to. So if they don't end up making an immediate impact, I don't want you to be like, oh, I thought these guys were so good they should be making an immediate impact. I don't ever put those expectations on freshmen. I just don't. So I'm not going to do that with these guys. But obviously would be two major gets, especially the way the defense ended the season. Like, you wouldn't expect these kind of flips to happen. And we'll see with the Nickerson thing if he does end up flipping. But you wouldn't expect that with how poor the season ended, and for them to get one in the fold and possibly another, that is a really good sign moving forward and how things are going right now for Mississippi State on the recruiting trail. And again, I've said this, like, Jeff Lebby, he can recruit really well, and it's not just offensively. Apparently he's got things going defensively as well. And so we'll see what ends up happening the rest of the way, because there's always potential for more flips and stuff like that to happen. So we'll see what ends up happening here as these final couple weeks before signing day happens. And also you got the transfer portal, and that's going to be obviously a big commodity or a big talking point as well, because they got to hit it hard on the defensive side of the football, especially on the defensive line. Front seven, you might want to add a linebacker or two, but I didn't think the linebackers were that bad this year. I thought it was really the front 4 or 3 or 2, however many they played up there sometimes, that were really poor. And so you're gonna have to get some help there. And so we'll have to wait and see some of the guys that enter the portal, some of the guys that are available that would consider coming to Mississippi State, and then go from there. But yeah, everything should be getting really start picking up right now. But yeah, massive get for Mississippi State to get Bralan Womack in the fold. That was just a crucial one I wasn't sure if they could pull off. I talked all year about how you have to be in these conversations to eventually be able to win these conversations, and they were in the conversation and they won it already. And for them to be able to do that after just a 5-7 season, another bad defensive season, if you look at the overall stats, regardless of the improvement, I mean, that's just obviously massive. But all right, coming up next, I mentioned the transfer portal. We've already seen at least 3 players enter the portal. Again, by the time this podcast is posted, or by the time you listen to it, it could be more. But as of now, 3 players have entered the portal. Who are they? We'll talk about that coming up next. All right. Well, the holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I've given Omaha Steaks as a gift before, and the reaction is always the same: excitement when the box arrives, and even bigger smiles when everything hits the grill. The quality is exactly what you'd hope for: incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. So save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for $50 off state or site wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code college at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code college. Terms apply. See site for details. All right. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Seriously, guys, thank you so much for helping us out with that. But let's dive into the transfer portal because that's obviously the next phase of the offseason now that Mississippi State is in full offseason mode with no games left. Obviously, didn't make a bowl game, so we got to dive into the transfer portal. So far, because when this thing is posted, this might not be the case anymore. But so far, there's only 3 guys that have entered the transfer portal, and it's Jordan Mosley is one of them. He was a guy that we talked about a couple times this year where we really expected big things from him, and at times he would flash it. He had a really solid season last year. They needed that third wide receiver to step up all season this year, and he just really never did it. I mean, he had some moments where he looked really good, and then he had some moments where you were, wondering where he was on the football field. And he ended up playing. I believe he played in every game. I don't remember him missing a game. I'm trying to think if there was a game that he missed, but no, he didn't miss a game actually. 12 games, he only had 8 catches for 168 yards and a touchdown. And that was your wide receiver 3 for just about the whole season. That is just something that just can't happen, especially when you have the offense that you have, up-tempo, what you hope to be a high-powered offense. When you've got that, you can't have your third receiver do as poor as he did numbers-wise. And, looking at his numbers, he did not have a catch the last 5 games. And in 6 of his last 7 games, he didn't have a catch. And the one game he did have a catch was 1 catch for 9 yards. It's just not good enough. I mean, it's just simply not good enough. And again, he had a strong year the year before because he had 23 catches, 405 yards, and 3 scores. But now, with that being said, I believe he's out of eligibility, and so he's going to have to petition for a 6th year. I hope that he gets it. I hope for the best and hope that he ends up being able to get it. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. So he was one that entered, and he's the most notable one of the group that entered because, he obviously played the most. Cam Thompson is another guy that entered the portal. So Cam transferred to Mississippi State, obviously from Northern Illinois. He played, he's another wide receiver. He played in 3 games, didn't have a catch, didn't register any stats in those 3 games. So this was expected. Ultimately, I assume he takes a red shirt because he played his freshman and sophomore year. Played quite a bit his freshman and sophomore year at Northern Illinois. Well, not as much as freshman year, but sophomore year. But both years he played over 4 games, so he couldn't redshirt. So I'm assuming he'd use this as his red shirt. 3 games he played this year: Southern Miss, Alcorn State, and Northern Illinois. So, and he didn't register a stat in any of those. So that's another one. The last one that entered is Stonka Burnside. This is a guy that we really had high hopes for. Landon and I, if you've listened to us talk, we really liked Stonka. And he ultimately decides that he wants to head to the transfer portal. Now, I didn't see anything that made it clear, like if he was wanting to enter to play receiver or if he is good with staying on defense or whatever he wanted to do. Because remember, he originally came as a wide receiver, gets moved to that defensive side of the ball, and all offseason they talked about how willing he was to do that, and that was great. That he was, and we knew this year was going to be a year that he was going to have to learn the position. He was going to have to learn the defense, and he wasn't going to be able to play right away. And maybe that's why he ultimately decided to transfer. He also might have decided to transfer because of how loaded that room is. And again, he also might have decided to transfer because he just wants to play receiver. I mean, that's possible too. 24/7 Sports has him listed as a receiver in their list of outgoing transfers. They list him as a receiver. So it is very possible he's like, Coach, I tried out the defensive side of the ball. I think I'd be better as a receiver. I want to go back to receiver. And they just said, we just don't have a spot at receiver right now. And again, that's very possible that that's what happened with Stonka. But also it's possible that he's just ready to move on to a different school and ready for another opportunity. And he couldn't get on the field on defense, so he wants to still play defense, but he couldn't get on the field on defense with a unit that wasn't very good. And then you bring in obviously Bralan Womack, and then of course you're going to hit the transfer portal, I'm assuming, at pretty much everywhere. So he just might have said, hey, I just need a fresh start. But yeah, of the three so far, because with transfer portal season, those are popping every 5 seconds, it feels like, and it's going to go more, especially after the conference championship week. You'll see even more of that. But I think that as of now, the ones that have entered are kind of expected. I guess you could say Mosley maybe not expected, just because he was such a big part of the team the last 2 years in terms of like his playing time. But then again, he has to petition for another year, and it's not like a shock that he entered either. So you haven't lost any like big surprises yet. And so we'll see if they're able to keep that going. Obviously, if you have a big loss, then that raises some red flags, especially because it's hard to replace those big losses. You would rather get a person that's so good that they could replace a big loss, but you don't have to replace the big loss. He's just added to that unit. And so that would be the ideal scenario for Mississippi State if they're not able to lose anyone big. Again, they're going to lose some depth. They're going to lose some stuff like that just because guys are looking for more playing time. Maybe they want to switch positions, whatever the case may be. And that's understandable. And that stuff is going to happen. And for the time being, we're just going to have to wait it out and see what all ends up happening. But as of now, again, no surprises. And that's what you ultimately want to see. As far as anything else goes, there's no one that I have like a idea like, hey, keep an eye on this guy about entering. Isaac Smith entering the draft. That's something to kind of keep an eye on once that starts getting rolling. But yeah, I mean, other than that, just keep an eye on the transfer portal. Follow Hayes Fawcett if you don't on 3, because he's putting it out every 5 seconds. It feels like a different transfer portal option. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. All right, coming up next, we will recap the weekend's game, or I will recap the weekend's game, and I'll let you know if Landon and I got our upset picks right. So don't go anywhere. All right, well, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. With 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views, pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer. I've talked about that many times. My favorite part about about Game Time. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, game time. All right, so let's look through the weekend slate of games. There was a lot of really good ones. So first, let's start with our upsets. I did have Landon text me to remind me his upset. He had the Texas Longhorns over the Texas A&M Aggies. He nailed that one, 27-17. Texas wins that one. I mentioned on the show on let's see, that would have been what Thursday show. Everything was thrown off because we did the crossover, but I believe that was Thursday show when we did that. But I mentioned on that I was with him. I wanted to pick that one if he didn't pick it, just because until Texas A&M beats Texas, I don't have any faith they can beat Texas. And it was kind of evident. That did not look like the same Texas A&M team we've seen this year. They looked scared to play that game. They looked like it was big brother against little brother, and little brother was having a good year and big brother put them in their place. And that's what it looked like. And that's what I was worried about going into the game if I was a Texas A&M fan, was that Texas was going to big brother them. And that's exactly what they did. And now Texas has put themselves in the college football playoff conversation. I don't think there was enough upsets for them to get in. I understand Texas fans say, hey, if we didn't schedule Ohio State, well, don't lose to Florida too. Like, you can say both things. Like, for every person, a Texas fan that says, well, Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State, there's going to be the other side that says Florida, Florida, Florida. Don't lose to a 4-8 Florida team. I mean, that's the case. And I saw people say, well, Alabama lost to a 4-8 Florida State team. Well, Alabama went 10-2. If you went 10-2 with a loss to Florida and a loss to, Ohio State, or a loss to whoever, or Georgia, you're probably in. But then on the flip side, if you went 10-2 with a loss to Ohio State and Georgia, you're definitely in. But this is what I would say to Texas fans. If you want to know which loss actually hurt you, think of it this way. When you lost to Ohio State, you dropped from 1 to number 7. That loss did not hurt you. When you lost to Georgia, I believe you dropped maybe 1 or 2 spots. You didn't drop very far. That loss didn't hurt you. The Florida loss is the one that dropped you out of the top 25 at that time. That loss hurt you. That's the loss that's holding you out. It's that loss. And I understand the argument for the Ohio State. I get it. But for every argument you make about Ohio State, there's an argument about the Florida loss. I don't think you're going to end up getting in, mainly because you didn't have the upsets ahead of you that you needed to get into the fold. Georgia Tech and Georgia was kind of a weird game. It felt like Georgia was in control the whole game. They were in control the whole game. It felt like a blowout, even though it was a 16-9 win for Georgia. It was just a weird game. Kansas looked like they might have been able to pull off an upset against Utah. Didn't ultimately happen. Utah kind of pulled away late in that one. Ohio State, Michigan, I mentioned that one on the deal. I didn't end up picking that one mainly because I just didn't think Michigan would be able to do it 5 years in a row. And, Ohio State finally stood up and matched their physicality from Michigan. And, Julian Sand looked really good. Bo Jackson looked really good. They just played a really good game. Oregon kind of struggled with Washington, but escaped with a 26-14 win. I didn't even mention it. My upset was Clemson over South Carolina. I'm still shocked to this day that South Carolina was favored in that game. Clemson won 28-14. I mentioned how South Carolina has one of the worst offensive lines in football. That was evident as they gave up 5 sacks in the game to Clemson. Oklahoma almost went down. So talking about the upsets for Texas, OU losing would have been a big one for Texas. But OU scores late in that game with like 3 or 4 minutes left, blown coverage. Isaiah Satenga wide open, touchdown, 17-13. For those that say OU doesn't deserve to be in because the offense is bad, it's just a ridiculous statement. The reason why OU goes 10-2, they have a top 10 strength of schedule. They have a top 10 strength of record. This isn't like Indiana getting in last year where they had a great record, but they didn't play anyone. OU played a lot of people and beat a lot of people. And they don't have a bad loss. Their losses are to Texas, who Texas fans say should be in the college football playoff, and their losses to Ole Miss, who is in the college football playoff. And the loss to Texas was the first game back with John Mantier from the thumb injury. Again, OU is going to get in, and they deserve to be in. Now, does that mean they're going to win a playoff game? No. Does that mean they're not going to get blown out? No, they might get blown out. Although their defense is playing such good football, them getting blown out just doesn't really happen very often. I mean, even the Texas game, which is about as close to a blowout as you can get, was 23-6, but Texas scores a punt return at the very end of the game to make it 23-6, and they got away with like 3 blocking the backs on the play. But still, they scored a touchdown to make it more of a blowout than it was. But that was a game OU led at half, and we're in for much of the second half until the very end of that one. The Iron Bowl, again, most overrated rivalry in college sports. I know Auburn fans are going to hype it up. Hey, we lost by 7. Anyone that watched that game never had faith that Auburn was going to pull off that game. Never. No one ever thought it. Ever. And Alabama didn't even think it. And Cam Coleman fumbles there at the end, and it kind of was like, yep, sounds about right. That's about how Auburn ends it right there. Very overrated rivalry. It just, again, another game where Alabama is really good. Auburn sucks. And that's just how it feels like it's been the last 2 decades. And I know it hasn't before Auburn fans get all mad. That's just how it's felt. Other than that, Cal, I guess, upsets SMU. So one of the funniest storylines this week is Duke, 7-5 Duke playing for the ACC championship game. I would love for them to beat Virginia. I think that'd be hilarious because now you're probably getting 2 group of 5 teams in because you can't rank Duke. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes that come to the college football playoff because of this season. They might just end up going, you get in if you win the conference, or it's the higher ranked team in your conference. So, for example, Duke and Virginia, if Duke beat Virginia, Miami is like number 11. So instead of Duke getting to go, which they wouldn't in this scenario because there's 2 group of 5 teams ahead of them, but because Duke wouldn't get to go, Miami would get to go because they're a higher rated ACC team. And that's really the biggest knock on Miami. It's like, you tell us how good you are, you can't even win that conference, and that conference is terrible. So I don't know, you can't even win that. So that's not a good thing. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the games around the country. It was a pretty fun week, especially with the Thanksgiving NFL games, and then you get into the Black Friday games, and then the weekend, and so on and so forth. So, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in college sports, from rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over at Athlon Sports. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We post daily videos Monday through Friday, so check that out. And until next time, Hail State.